Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris, and today I'm checking out the fifth studio album from Saor, titled Origins. Another one of my most anticipated albums of the year for sure, and we're staying in the more extreme side of the heavy metal spectrum with Scottish metal band Saor, and no doubt I am ruining that name, because I always do around here. But anyway, Saor is the project of Soul member Andy Marshall, and his music, I guess, is best described, I've read, as atmospheric folk slash black metal. I don't really know any better way to describe it than that. I guess Winter Thilith with a bit more emphasis on the folk, maybe? Might be a little bit of a way to go for it, probably not, whatever. I've only somewhat recently discovered this band. I think it was about 2 years ago now that I discovered it. One of the many times during the year of suffering known as 2020, when I would just spend hours listening to music to find new stuff that would inspire me, I stumbled upon the album Forgotten Paths, which was released, I believe, in 2019. Specifically, I heard the song Bron, and in short, it blew my mind wide open. It was just so fucking good. I've since heard the album Aura as well. I've got the vinyl of that one. It was my very first in-store purchase at Black City Records in Bristol. I'll always plug that place when I can because it's amazing. It was the day I interviewed Diaz Holocaustum at the store, which was also amazing. I've also given Guardians, the album, a spin as well, and that too is amazing. I haven't heard Roots yet, the first album. I will definitely get around to that at some point because I have loved everything I've heard from Saor so far. But of course, we now have the newest album, Origins, which dropped on June 24th via Seasons of Mist. Saor's music has been very consistent across the now 5 albums. The blending of the atmosphere, the folk, and the black metal it's kind of more or less done in a similar vein every single time, but it's done so seamlessly, melding all those different styles together. The only difference, I guess, across all the albums is which aspects he decides to put a little bit more into the forefront. With Forgotten Paths, it had less of a black metal edge, only slightly, and focused more on the woodwind style of folk music. Aura having a bit more of a gritty production, which you might find on some iconic black metal albums to give it a little bit more character, if that makes any sense. And Guardians had, again, more emphasis on folk music, with bagpipes as well being used a lot more. I mean, he still uses them across the albums, but a little bit more on Guardians. I do urge you to read the bio on the official website if you're at all interested in learning about the musical intentions and inspirations within Andy Marshall's music in Saor. It is really, really interesting stuff. Link, of course, down in the description below. Fundamentally, what I mean by all this is that on the surface, this album, Origins, is an easy recommendation if you've already really enjoyed the other Saor albums up to this point. It still has that perfect blending of atmosphere, folk, and black metal that you know Saor for. There are some key differences in this album though, of course, if you care to look at it all a little bit more closely. First thing is first, the songs are all on a much shorter side than on previous albums. None of these hit the 9-minute mark, which is a stark contrast to pretty much all the other albums where they normally exceed 10 minutes per track. So it does, I guess you could say that there's a lot more individual ideas on this album because they're shorter tracks and the total number of tracks is a little bit more numerous as well. From what I've read, this album is a homage to the Picts of Scotland. And again, on the band's website, Andy says this is what inspired him to make the album a bit more pagan sounding and a bit more of a tribal feel across the whole album, and that is felt right from the off with the opening track. Call of the Carnix, I believe that's how it's pronounced. A Carnix, incidentally, is a classical instrument and is very cool looking. Another link down in the description below where you can see a video of it being played. Seriously, have a look, it's really, really cool. Said instrument can be heard on this track, and paired with the drumming, yes, we do have that very tribal feel. It's a really cool build-up and way to open the album. And those guitars are just so fucking good. I love the riffs that this guy comes up with. They are epic. They were epic the first time I heard this band. They are still epic now. I could listen to this guy play guitar all day. What Saor can do really well is repeat a really good idea or riff for minutes on end, making it feel quite hypnotic and mesmerizing, which is proven by how none of his longest songs get boring. As I said before, though, the songs on this album are shorter than what we are used to, so it would be very easy to do as before, do these long riffs and stretch them out for 5-6 minutes, however long the songs on this album are. Create a few simple yet brilliant lines, repeat them, and then call it a day. But that isn't the case here. The opening track, and all of them for the record, jump between quite a few ideas and passages. Every minute is something new and interesting, and the transitions between all of those is seamlessly done. The album on the whole feels very much more riff-focused than what we're used to. The guitar parts dominate most of the album, especially on the second track, Fallen, for example. What I wasn't expecting, though, is some of the melody lines are, dare I say it, uplifting, for lack of a better word. Some of the single-note lines that you get in this song are a bit less doom-laden or intense. It's still big and epic. It's hard to describe, but it's really cool, and not what I was expecting at all, which was really, really nice. It was during the track The Ancient Ones, which has a beautiful intro, by the way, when it hit me that the vocals aren't as in the background as they have been on previous albums. They feel much more part of the sound now, rather than things largely being an instrumental affair. Don't get me wrong, when I think Saor, the vocals aren't normally the first thing that spring to mind for me, except for Sophie Rogers' vocals on the song Bron, because they are so fucking good. The instrumentation still rules over most of the album, but the more developed vocals are definitely worth acknowledging here, and like everything else, they're integrated perfectly. This track is also the first time the folk parts really got to me. I love folk instruments in metal. Just check out my video talking to Michelina of Velvety. We spend a lot of time talking about that. And this song, they have their moments to shine. Between the blistering guitars and drums, particularly at the very beginning and very end of the song. They are simply gorgeous. Aurora is just epic in its purest form. The very strong single-note guitar melodies, the strings providing the depth, the solid chugging of the rhythm section, it's all here. Also got to love those trademark Saor tremolo guitar lines. I do like to incorporate a few of those in my songs as well. Love this track from start to finish, it's so good. It's everything great about Saor in 8.5 minutes long. As well as all that though, we also have a more straight and traditional standard guitar solo section towards the end, which is also a nice surprise and really, really cool. There's actually quite a lot of new things for Saor sprinkled across the entire album that you might miss on a cursory listen, but it's there if you look for it. Fuck's sake, I'm going to talk about every single track again, aren't I? Well, not too much to say about Beyond the Wall. Still awesome, great background string stuff going on, and really cool whispered vocals about halfway through. And again, the outro is great, great stuff. Seriously epic. If the aim of this music is to evoke the feeling of looking over a grand Scottish mountain range, then it succeeds completely. The closing track, which is also the title track, is probably the heaviest song on the album at points. Not the intro though. When it starts, I was thinking, that guitar part sounds like a clean Iron Maiden riff. That galloping kind of thing. Can't go wrong there. But when it boots off just before the 2-minute mark, I thought, fuck me, that's heavy. I say heaviest part at points in the song, because after that we then get the second half of the song, which is effectively one long outro. And like I said, with the track Fallen, it's oddly uplifting. I would even raise that and say it sounds hopeful, which is a vibe for the closing song, which I was not expecting from a Saor album, but it grows and becomes massive and grand and just completely overwhelms you. Devon Townsend levels of powerful, I guess, but with some pipes. That's basically the only real takeaway here is, to nobody's surprise at all, Saor's new album is just a stunning piece of black folk metal. Unlike the other Saor albums, it feels like it leans a little bit more on the riff side of things, more on the metal than the folk and the atmosphere. That might put you off if those latter two things were what drew you into this artist in the first place. Admittedly, that was me. I love the folk parts of Saor so much, but that takes nothing away from how good every aspect of the music is. And it's not like the folk and atmosphere are absent. They're still there, and they're still great, as they always have been. But this is very much, I guess, the guitarist's Saor album, if that makes any sense at all. What also amazes me is, and I'm really not trying to make this sound like a backhanded compliment here, but this isn't complicated music. It's not massively technical, but it has infinitely more depth than a lot of metal out there right now. You can get so lost in this thing. Saor's music just pulls you in and moves me in a way that a lot of bands don't. I would love one day to meet this guy and talk about how he goes about creating his music, and also to delve into the complexities on what it all means to him, because I have no doubt it would be a fascinating conversation. Saor's new album Origins is a triumph. Just go listen to it right now. Thanks again for watching, hope you enjoyed. Go listen to some amazing heavy metal Bloodstock very soon. We'll see you in the next video.